Welcome. This is The Lion's Table, Ep.2. Pull up a chair and join us. We're talking about growing your business through government contracting. I'm April. This is Scott.
Hello.
And we're the owners of Line National Corp. So today we thought we would start at the very beginning, at the top, and talk about what is government contracting for those who don't know.
Government contracting is the procurement of products and services by the federal, state, local governments. They purchase everything that there is that you can possibly think of. I'll go back to what I said in the last episode. Look around the room. Everything you see, the government buys. Go outside. Everything you see,
Right.
The government buys.
And people know, they think about roads and bridges and fighter jets and toilet paper.
What they don't think about is yoga instructors and vehicles and janitorial services and the amount of renovation work that they do. And there's really just a nearly endless list of what the government is purchasing.
Absolutely. They need event planning, and I've seen a solicitation for clowns for entertainment. They need catering and all kinds of things that we don't think about. So
What's your favorite?
Like the most wild thing I've seen.
What's your favorite one you've seen?
Solicited was the removal of a dead whale carcass that had washed up on the beach at a military installation in California. And, you don't think about things like that, but somebody has to come and clean it up.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, the removal of beaver dams.
Removal of beaver dams.
Yeah.
How were
a wetland
beaver
area
dams?
that was completely blocked up by beavers, and it was flooding out local communities and flooding sewer systems, and had to go and remove the beavers.
So if you're a beaver removal expert, there's opportunities
That's just
even for you.
It's just examples that they're all over they can be all over the place.
But the federal government alone spends between $600 and $700 billion a year. The budget is increasing every year. When you add in state and local agencies, we're
It's more than $1 trillion.
North of $1 trillion, and the government wants at least a quarter of that to go to small businesses. So that's where we really focus. So who can benefit from this? The answer is just about anyone, everyone.
Everybody. If you've got experience, if you don't have experience, if you want to start a business, if you got an existing company, if you are truly selling a product or service, you can benefit from the procurement of the government marketplace. You can.
What if you don't have any government connections, though? What if you don't know anyone?
This is part of what we're going to be talking about through this. Is we're going to talk about the avenues of information that's made available. We use a word all the time. It's about synthesizing the data that's there. So a lot of people look at government marketplace, and it seems like it's a little bit overwhelming. But if you've got somebody to walk you through this, and you can see where to go look, where to get your information from, how to process that information, how to not waste a ton of time feeling like you're overloaded by it, and be able to walk through it quickly, then you and your business and your employees and your community can all benefit from that.
I wish that the first time I read through a full RFP, which is request for proposal, we talk about acronyms all the time, that someone had said, listen, you can skip the first X number of pages, go to section L, and that's where you're going to find out whether or not you're even qualified. I wouldn't have wasted my time on the,
Well, those are the little things you learn. Now,
don't
read the whole contract.
Absolutely.
But when we're talking about vetting projects and that kind of thing, these are things that I want to be teaching people. How do you expedite that process? And there's a lot of things that people who've been doing this for a long time, they understand. And if you don't understand it, this is we're here for. We want to help you get to these shortcuts. You should be able to learn from other people's experience. We've been doing this for more than a decade now, and helping
Almost two.
businesses. Almost two. Yeah.
We talk also a lot about the various minority ownership categories. So we're talking about women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. The government sets aside millions and millions of dollars in specific contracts,
Yeah.
specifically for those ownership categories, which means that when you compete, you're in a smaller pool of competition.
Yeah, limited competition space.
Exactly, and you have better access. If you can check multiple boxes, that's even better because then you're really limiting your pool of
Yeah,
competition.
the other avenues that I want to talk about is strategic partnerships, because a lot of times small businesses are sought after by large companies because all contracts have a participation requirement. And if you're a large business and you have the capability of performing this work, but the federal government has a responsibility that that particular project has to go to small businesses, then you have to partner with somebody to do it. So there's all kinds of programs that are in place. There's SBA recognized mentor protege agreements that can be put in place where large businesses are actually helping the development of small businesses, and there's a process that the SBA actually has in place.
Hold on, SBA, Small Business
Small
Association.
Business Association. Lots of acronyms.
Lots of acronyms.
There's joint venture agreements, JVs.
Right. And this is key because if you're partnering with a larger business, if you're the small business, you might not have the bonding capacity, you might not have the labor force, you might not have the adequate cash flows, you might not have the technology that you need to perform a larger contract. But when you partner with a large business that can perform that work, either as a subcontractor or as a prime contractor, then you can leverage the resources of the larger company, learn from them in the process, and then gain that experience.
Yeah, and there's
to
actually
take
a
with
lot.
you.
There's actually a lot of opportunities that are put out by federal, state, local governments that's included.
Right.
Like those, that specific outline is something that's permissible in there. So it's things that I want to talk about and educate everybody on.
So we talked about what and we talked about who. Now let's talk about why. Why would I want to do business with the government?
The truth is that the government is the largest purchaser of products and services, be it federal, state, and local government here in the U.S. on the planet. They buy more goods and services than anybody else does. Here's some other things. We talk about economic changes that happen. Understand that government spend cycles are different than what we see in commercial market spaces. Government spend cycles can be 24 and 36 months out, where commercial and we see in a lot of things in the public sector where they can be directly affected by immediate economic changes that are taking place. So it's important to have a sustainability market.
Right. So you talk about
included.
24 to 36 months, meaning that the spending for those future periods is already set and approved.
Yeah.
What that means is, again, if the private sector were to dip significantly, as long as you have a portion of your revenue stream diversified into government contracting, often you can weather a storm. You can kind of tighten up a little bit, but you've got your payroll covered, you've got your expenses covered, and you can come out the other side. By that time, the private sector is generally rebounding.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, but when you look at like the recession that was in 2007 and 2008, and again in 2020, the truth is that businesses that had a diversified revenue stream were able to navigate, manage, and weather those
And
changes
survive.
with less difficulty. And there's a lot of businesses that were greatly negatively impacted. And I want to help people understand that, get past that.
Right. And anytime, let's be honest, you can diversify your revenue streams. I mean, no one would tell you, regardless of if you're in the private sector or the government sector, no one would
Yeah.
say that it would be a good idea to have just one client.
Yeah.
You have to have diversity of your revenue so that you're sustainable.
Another great benefit in working for the government is government has a lot of term contracts. So you may find opportunities that are not just a one-time supply. It might be that it is a 1 year or even multi-year contract, and that's hugely beneficial for a business, for business's growth, for a business's sustainability.
Well, sure. That means you've got reliable cash flows into future periods that you can count on, and take that into consideration, like you said, with your growth.
Yeah.
So we talked about small businesses working under larger businesses and learning from them. We've talked about the long-term nature of budgetary approvals, particularly at the federal level. And also, it's important, I think, for everyone to just participate in the ethical spending of public funds. Every one of us is a taxpayer. Everyone listening is a taxpayer. We should all want our taxpayer dollars spent in an
Listen,
ethical
if you're a business
manner.
that's in good standing and provides a good product or service and you're knowledgeable about what it is that you are offering, odds are you fall in that category of being able to be an expert in your subject matter and efficient at what your business model is. And these are the things that we need to make sure that we're promoting. There are so many companies that are out there that do amazing work. They are fantastic at what they're providing, and I want to see them have an opportunity to diversify their revenue streams.
Well, and I want to, be intentional about reminding people that government contractors can't possibly be subject matter experts in all the things they buy. They might know a specific niche, but they might not even be aware of what's available to them. They might have a generalized need, but not know what the best solution is. So when you can come in as the subject matter expert of your product or service, you can really be a huge benefit to the government agency.
We spend a good portion of our time talking with procurement officials in public agencies, and the challenges that they face are very, very difficult sometimes. And the processes that are there they're there for a reason, but nothing helps them out more than when you have a supplier that is at the top of their game in what they're providing for you.
Yes.
It makes their lives so much better. And I have to tell you that when you have a public agency who you have benefited so much, they come back around.
Right. And, that's a good time to segue into sole source opportunities.
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't aware that there are what's called sole source opportunities where a business can be directly awarded a contract from the government based on certain parameters, of course. It's not always the case. It's often tied to a specific minority category. But if you are, quote, the guy that does that thing well and they know and trust you, there are ways that they can help you with sustainability.
That's primarily in the federal environment. In the state and local government, it's fantastic to get associated with a co-op. And a co-op is going to be a entity that is sponsored by a public agency that pre-prices and pre-approves vendors to supply services for public agencies, and the public agency can go directly into contract with those businesses, and it's just an immense cost savings that's in there. It doesn't mean that the procurement process doesn't have its place, but there are definitely tons and tons of services that they could be saving a whole lot of money on. And that's one of the things that we're doing on a daily basis is educating, again, both public agencies and suppliers.
Right. Let's talk about that a little more because
Okay.
we manage a cooperative purchasing contract. When he said co-op, that's what he's talking about. Cooperative purchasing is an alternative to the traditional procurement model, which everyone knows is the multi-bid. A public agency will put an opportunity out, publish it publicly, and then multiple vendors can respond with their pricing and their parameters of the deal. Generally speaking, the public agency is then beholden to the lowest bidder.
Which is not always the most qualified
That
supplier for that
is
product or service.
one of the huge challenges in that multi-bid environment. The lowest bidder might be unseasoned, to put it politely. They might not fully understand the scope of work, or sometimes we see companies that go in with a lowball price in order to win work, counting on using change orders later to make up the money that they
There's
need.
very few things that are more difficult talking to procurement officials than going back and having to get additional funds. I mean, there's expectations with projects, and when we talk to people who are buying for public agencies, you'll see that, but it's really tough for them. So the co-op mimics that competitive acquisition for products and service process, but it's done on the front end. So businesses will apply and competitively bid for supplying their product and service. They'll develop price models. They'll develop geographic coverage areas for responding to these RFPs that are put out. But what it does is it opens the door up for public agencies to be able to utilize these businesses, these vendors, to go directly and purchase products and services from.
So the best way to illustrate that is through an example, and we'll compare the traditional bid environment to the cooperative purchasing environment. So let's say there's a school that has a leaky roof. They might not have a roofing expert on board. They might need to hire an engineering firm to come out and take a look at their system and see what they need. Meanwhile, it's raining, the roof is leaking, now there's additional water damage. They have to develop an RFP, which is a request for proposal. This is a legal document that they have to develop and write out for the acquisition of services. That has to be published for a certain number of days, generally at least 30 days. Remember, the roof is still leaking every time it rains. They then gather bids and they evaluate them against each other.
Hopefully they come within their budgeted estimate.
Right. I was going to say they've developed a budget at some point. What if all the bids come in over budget? Then they have to start over again and reanalyze where their budgetary needs are. Now they've got ancillary damages because of the roof leak. There's additional costs associated with, it could be drywall damage or electrical damage, flooring, whatever.
Tremendously difficult for
absolutely.
them.
And that process, we've seen that take, 150, 180, 210 days. It's very costly. That time is obviously money. Yeah. In the cooperative purchasing environment, roofers are pre-qualified in this example. So the co-op itself will put out an RFP for roofing services, and a roofing company can then respond with their full catalog of products and services and what their labor rates are and so forth. They become a pre-approved, pre-priced, pre-qualified vendor. So now in that same scenario, when the roof starts to leak, the school can go directly to the co-op and say, who's your qualified roofing company? Send them out immediately, and they can go into contract while remaining compliant with procurement law because, again, the competitive piece is maintained. But they're much more likely to get a qualified solution.
That is a vastly growing procurement method for public agencies. It is a fantastic description of ethical use of public funds. I mean, it straight up saves money every time.
I love this. So let's talk about some misconceptions. We hear them all the time. We talk to people
Yeah.
almost everywhere we go. The top misconception is that, the complexity of government contracting. It's too hard. It's too tricky. It's too risky. It's just too difficult. I can't figure it out. I went to sam.gov and I couldn't find what I was looking for. I hear that all the time.
Yep.
What do you say to someone like that?
The answer is no, it's not too difficult. But what is difficult is taking the time to learn that process. This is what we have been doing for years, is helping companies to navigate that, to take the data that is made available for them. Remember, it's public information. It's how you synthesize that data, but helping companies to understand how to evaluate work that's out there, how to identify where it's at, how to, in short order, determine if it's something that actually fits your business, how to respond to the
How to market yourself to the government,
how
how
to
to
market
perform
yourself.
at that level.
Yeah.
I mean, we
How
hear a
does
lot of this.
sometimes even tell the government what they need
Right.
without them knowing, because they're not always as you said before, the subject matter expert. So
Right. So this is something that, maybe
it's
it
not.
took
It's not the
me.
most difficult thing in the world. You just need to
Right.
understand. You need to understand how to get through that process, and
Right.
we're gonna dive into all of these things in episode by episode. I want to go ahead and we'll tackle these subjects. And
Well, we can condense this education and streamline. I mean, something that might have taken me, 8 or 10 years to consider myself an expert. We can really condense that learning
gosh,
timeline
yeah.
down very considerably for a new or existing business that wants to get into this market.
yeah,
Another thing we hear all the time is, well, I'm an artist. The government doesn't need my services.
that's funny, because we have a friend who's an artist, and we just really had the opportunity to show him a RFP, request for proposal, that was put out there, acronym. And we looked at it. He didn't think that he would qualify for it. He actually did qualify for it. And then we showed him later on that opportunity went for a substantial amount of money. And he could have responded to that. And, we're encouraging, him today to look at those same types of opportunities out there. So again, the government buys literally everything. I mean,
We had another conversation with someone locally that said, well, I'm a portrait photographer. I take
Right.
like prom photos and wedding photos. Well, think
Yeah.
about every website for every military installation that
Yeah.
has headshots for every official and every
businesses
ranking
that
member. And
sell medical supplies.
Of course.
I mean, that you can. I mean, I just can't think of an item or a product or a service that they're not purchasing.
let's see, another misconception we hear all the time is that the government doesn't pay well. And we touched a little bit on this on our intro episode, but margins are very competitive, if not higher.
Listen, coming from a contracting world, I'm going to say this. If you understand your product or service that you are providing and you can do a good job at it, whether you're in the private sector or you're in the public sector, you're going to be able to turn a decent profit. I love the fact that the government marketplace has rules and outlines that are there, and the truth is that's not just in place to protect the buyer, it's in place to protect the supplier as well. And I think it actually creates a tremendously effective environment for businesses to find revenue of not just sustainability but growth.
Right. It's also worth mentioning when we're talking about payment from the government that they are a guaranteed pay entity, that you will not have collection issues, that generally you're going to get an electronic payment in 30 days and not have to worry about that side of it.
Yeah. The other thing is if they're late for whatever reason on their side, they pay you interest.
They will pay you interest. That's correct. So maybe that's a good time to address the elephant in the room. We are in 2025, and we are seeing some chaos at the federal level.
We're seeing major restructuring in the federal marketplace right now. There's a lot of people that are impacted by it. I know that it sounds, like insurmountable, but the government is still buying products and services.
The budget continues to increase every year.
As much as they're working on modifying the budget, it's still a tremendous amount of resource that's needed no matter what.
Right. So thinking in terms of starting a podcast on government contracting during this time, it's the same thing I would say to anyone looking at business opportunities. This is a great time to learn and to position yourself and educate yourself so that when the floodgates open and the deluge comes, which it will, you're positioned to take advantage of that. Because who wants just the billionaires to be the ones that take advantage?
On the other side of that too, your state and local agencies are still in a position where they're purchasing products as well. So
in fact, we've seen an uptick in Q1. We actually have the state and local level
a tremendous increase in purchasing from state and local government. The market just doesn't fluctuate as much as we see in the private sector.
Correct. And regardless, it's a great time, like I said, to position yourself. This is a long game. In the best of conditions, this is not a get-rich-quick thing. So using this time wisely, I think, is advisable for anybody who's in business. So again, we're gonna go into the minute details. We're gonna really get into the weeds on some of these subjects in future episodes. So be sure to join.
I want people to ask questions too, because we're covering a lot of generalities in here, and we do want to get into the details for everybody. So, ask your question, and that'll help us to direct our episodes so that they might help you now, and you're not waiting for episode 22 for us to get to it.
Absolutely. So how do you do that? We talk about joining our pride. We have this network of engaged business owners. We are always looking to expand that network, and it's a place where we can exchange ideas and questions. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on LinkedIn at Lion National Corp. You can check out our website, fill out our contact form. Let us know who you are and where you're from and what kind of business you have. And if you have any questions, throw them in that contact form. That website is www.lionnational.com. And we thank you so much for joining us. Please join us again on our journey. Thank you.
Okay. True, false.
Oh, I almost forgot. Lightning round, true, false.
True, false. Okay.
Let's do it.
So here's my first one. Ready? True, false. Small businesses can participate in jobs that are too large for them to perform.
Absolutely true. Most large contracts have a small or minority business participation requirement. So again, you can absolutely leverage the bonding capacity and labor force and technology and cash flows of a larger entity in order to build your experience portfolio.
Participate with them as a subcontractor. You can work with them as a joint venture. You can work with them as a prime contractor. There's a lot of different avenues, and it depends on the opportunity. But yeah, don't think that just because a job is big, you can't be a part of it.
That you don't have access.
Right, you can't benefit from it.
Correct. True or false? Small businesses are those having less than $15 million in annual revenue.
That is not true. So, acronym NAICS codes, and that's North American Industry Classification System. It identifies nearly all different types of trades and services through different NAICS codes, and they have the SBA designates different values that identify what is a small business and transition to what a large business would be.
So you're saying that those thresholds are assigned differently for different NAICS codes or categories of work.
Said it much better than I did. Thank you. And actually, so let's just say it was $15 million, and let's say your business had a great year and you exceeded $15 million. It's not just 1 year, it's a 3-year rolling average. Don't think that just because potentially your business had a good year, you're all of a sudden now you're not being able to really have the benefits of the systems that are in place for small businesses.
And two things I want to mention about that. The small business thresholds change on an annual basis. They can go up or down depending on market conditions. Mm-hmm. So you have to keep an eye on that. And also there are some specialty categories like mining.
Where it's not based on dollar value, it's on number of employees.
Number of employees, that's correct. And I actually didn't know that until I started digging. We haven't had any clients in the crude oil space.
Okay, so true or false? It's difficult to find contracting and partnering opportunities because the government keeps data and forecasting and award information hidden, not available. I don't want to say secret, but just difficult to cross that data.
That's false. That's a huge misconception out there amongst the public. So all awards, including details about the opportunity itself, the awardee, the company information, the owners of that company, the location, all of that information.
Federal government even publishes pay schedules for opportunities that have been completed.
Correct. You can literally look at every payment made and where it went and who those folks are that received those payments.
I wanted this in here because I think it brings up a good subject later on for talking about how to synthesize some of this data so you can find out who's your competition, what is that client actually looking for. That client might actually not be correctly being taken care of by that vendor. And there's little things that you can kind of look through and go, oh, yeah, we really should be approaching this procurement official and talking to them because I think we can help them. Maybe we can do a better job. You can see some of that data in there. We'll talk about that stuff later on.
All right. So true or false? This is the fun one. Scotty, you once hired more than 100 people in Key West to build a high-end residential complex.
That's false.
Why? What's false about it?
Okay, so I did build a high-end residential complex in Key West, but back then I had advertised for help back then, and that market I didn't get one response.
There was no local labor force.
I didn't get one response.
So what did you do?
I imported all of my guys from the mainland down to Key West.
So you brought 100 and...
I was very popular with realtors.
Okay, explain.
There were 67 houses available for rent in Key West. How many houses did I rent?
You rented all 67 of them for your guys. You walked into multiple real estate offices and said, "I'll take everything you got."
Yeah, that was a big learning curve for working in that particular environment. But that just goes to show that it's not always what you're expecting.
That's right.
But you can find your way through it.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us again. Please join our pride, stay connected with us, and we look forward to seeing y'all in the next episode.
Thank you.